A new weight loss app for children has been called Disgusting and Dangerous. The product from WW, formerly known as Weight Watchers, is aimed at young people aged between 8 and 17. The Kurbo app encourages users to follow a traffic light system with their food. There are 2 petitions calling for the app to be removed, which have been signed collectively by almost 80,000 people. And the actor and body confidence activist Jamila Jamil claims it will breed food obsession from a young age. But WW says Kurbo, which is only available in the US, focuses on positive behaviour, positive change, not dieting or calorie counting. Here's Mindy Grossman, President and CEO of WW International, explaining why they decided to launch Kurbo.
The idea of really helping and support families was not just something that we wanted to do or was important for us to do, but it's really a responsibility for us to help families and help change the trajectory of what's happening in the world.
Well, a record number of children are obese in the UK, so if this app isn't the answer, then what is? We can speak to Donna Pavitt. She's battled with her weight throughout her life. At her heaviest, she was 17 stone when she was 15. She also attended slimming clubs. She's now a health and well-being coach. Also, Hope Virgo, a mental health campaigner who lived with anorexia for more than 4 years. Dr. Adrian Brown, a specialist dietitian and researcher in obesity for University College London, and also joining us, Angela Beecroft, a nutritionist who specialises in children's health. Welcome, all of you. Thanks for coming in. I'll start with you, first of all, Donna, because at 15 you were a size 24 and 17 stone, which is the heaviest you've ever been. This app is targeting kids between the ages of 8 and 17. Tell us more about your experience when weight started to become something you were aware of and how it was broached, because talking about discussing it in kids as young as 8 does sound very young.
It's pretty much been my whole life. I've always been on a diet, so pretty much ever since I can remember.
So like, what, before 18?
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember too much, but like before then. But I've got a photo of me when I was 5, just like looking at my body, breathing in. So it's always been part of my life, has been dieting, always wanted to be slimmer, and spending my whole kind of 20s, I'm in my 30s now, of just focusing my whole life on the scales, on food, on exercise, just to be a better person.
A better person? Did you feel that when you were 5?
No, when I was sort of about, well, teenager, from 13. Well, I went to slimming clubs when I was 13.
But when you say at 5, you look at that picture, you're breathing in.
Yeah.
What was going on with that 5-year-old?
Yeah, I know, I can't remember.
Do you know where that was coming from?
No, I don't. I just think I've always been a larger person. So, yeah.
I mean, well, you're not a larger person.
No, I'm not now, but it's taken a lot of hard work for me to get to where I am now. And now
the head stuff is obviously very important when you talk about yourself.
Mindset for anyone dieting, and I've been, as I say, gone from restrictive eating patterns to where I am now, helping other people overcome their body image and just to be more self-accepting of themselves as well, because it's just so important to let go of dieting. And just eat nutritional food, move your body, and I just want to help people overcome that, really.
So what do you think about this app?
I am against it just because of my own journey, of how it is, how I have gone through life consumed about dieting and food from as young as 13, when I stepped into my first slimming club. And it was just, everything was just focused on restrictions, and the restrictions then led to me overeating, binge eating, because it wasn't allowed. And then, so it's complicated. But I just think it's scary for what young children can go into, going from what I've been through.
What about your relationship with food?
So I lived with anorexia from the age of 12 up till I was 17, and then was hospitalised for a year. And I now manage my recovery in a really positive way. I've relapsed once in that kind of last 11 years since I've come out of hospital. But for me, I think food is always potentially going to be something that is something I have to work on. I have to challenge myself daily to make sure that I'm not calorie counting, to make sure that I'm not letting food control me. And I feel able to do that. I'm really confident in myself to do that. But
What first got you into the calorie counting and just looking at food and not seeing it as something that you might just enjoy?
so for me, it began as a way to control things, so this kind of emotional control. And then as I started to lose weight, people would compliment me on the fact I'd lost weight. And you get into this vicious cycle. And I think as a society, we spend so much time glamorizing being really skinny, and you have to be skinny to be successful. And it's this kind of messaging that actually these apps and social media generally is just fueling that messaging. And if we're putting pressure on young people and then rewarding them by telling them they look better or by telling them they're doing the right thing, it's just going to encourage more and more people to get into this vicious cycle with food.
So what do you think about this app?
I think it's really dangerous. I do a huge amount of work now in schools with primary school students and also secondary school students. And you come into contact every single day with young people who are already worried about their weight, their body image, their appearances, comparing themselves to each other. And the worry for me with this app is it's going to just amplify that. I spent a huge amount of my childhood researching calories, food restriction, good and bad foods online. And this app makes it so easy for people to access all of that information. And again, I think it will continue to just fuel that whole idea that, yes, we do have this obesity crisis, but by getting people to restrict what they're having and focus on good and bad foods, it's not going to solve that. We're going to get this entire generation of young people who are so obsessed and preoccupied in food and calories and exercise and restriction, and that's just not what we want to see.
Dr. Adrian Brown, we're obviously hearing how sensitive an issue it is. I mean, for anybody, whatever their age, but particularly young kids. And when from a young age you're made conscious of your body and conscious of what's in the food you're eating, it can obviously lead to long-term issues. What would you say is the best way to handle a situation with kids and food and weight?
First of all, as you said before, there is an obesity increase of prevalence within the UK with children. 1 in 5 children of 11 are now living with obesity. It increases with deprivation. So what we see is that with the lowest stages of deprivation, we have a 2 times higher case for the fact that we notice that that's a real issue. I think in terms of weight management within children, I think it's highly complex. I think there's a multitude of things that actually can affect someone's weight, including biological, genetic, social, and also environmental factors that can all come together to mean that someone gains weight.
But I mean, this app obviously is kind of putting the onus on the kids and their behaviour. So what do you think about that?
I think it should be inclusive, not exclusive. And I think that's a really important point, that the focus does appear to be on the child. When you look at the research, and the research comes from Stanford, it's based around their weight management program there. And what that involved is that involved therapists, that involved paediatricians. So it had a whole scope of healthcare professionals behind it to give it support. This appears to be focused on health trainers. We're unsure currently as to the training that they actually get, whether they are experts in helping children with overweight and obesity. So I think the important thing to understand is that the Weight Watchers have come to it with all good intentions. How it's been delivered, we need to see with time. I do agree with both the guests here that obviously there are concerns around the development potentially of eating disorders in particular groups of people. Obviously, we know that eating disorders develop through a variety of different reasons, both genetic, societal and psychological reasons why people develop them. But unfortunately, the app doesn't identify them. What should be there is that they should identify them at the start to see if there are, and then continually monitor them through the time.
So the Weight Watchers, WW as it's now called, statement says Kurbo focuses on behaviour change for healthier eating and more activity, not dieting or calorie counting. Studies show that behaviour-based weight management programmes do not cause eating disorders. In fact, they provide kids with tools to make balanced food choices and manage their weight in a healthy way. Donna, what's your reaction to that? Because obviously we're talking about
Yeah,
kids who are in an environment where they're not calling the shots on what food is put on their plates and how much exercise they get to
I
do.
just fear that it's going to become obsessive and a really bad habit for them to obsess about and to always think about. And it is a tracking app. And there's other apps out there that you can track your food on, but they're for 18 years plus. But yeah, it worries me at such a young age to get so obsessed and have that obsession with focusing everything on that.
What would you say is as formerly a child who was heavily overweight, the best way to first broach a subject with a child? Because in any context, it's going to make a child immediately feel conscious of themselves.
First of all, in regards to movement, I would get them to find something they enjoy, to do an activity they enjoy, then they would want to keep going and doing it. And also not to make food a reward as well. So if chocolate's a reward, it could lead to, not just make it a normal life. Like fill the plates up with colourful, nutritional foods. Again, not counting calories as such, especially from such a young age.
Let's bring in Angela Beecroft. How do you think these sensitive issues are best dealt with?
I actually agree. I echo the sentiments of the previous speakers because in my practice I see lots of children with mental health issues and it's a growing concern. Food, I don't want any child or any adult to count calories, weigh out food and become obsessed with food. There's so many different components of actually why we eat. Food is the most powerful thing that we put in our mouth 3-4 times a day. We need to educate. This is all about educating children, parents in schools. It's not just food, it's about the microbiome. You've got 2 kilos of bacteria that live in your gut. They profoundly affect your weight. It's also about your emotions. How do you feel? People eat for comfort, so there's a whole component. So actually we need to educate. We need to educate from the top. We need a nutritionist or people who know about food in every GP surgery, in every single school. There's a fleet of nutritionists out there. We can help people and educate the entire country so we don't need these apps.
Vicky on Twitter says, I'd be very worried if my 12-year-old girl who's approaching puberty became obsessed with an app like this. We just make sure we eat healthily, only have treats at the weekend and discuss the importance of being healthy in life. Linda on email, it's not the responsibility of an app to tackle childhood obesity. The responsibility lies with the parents not to keep buying their children fattening and unhealthy food. A bag of 5 apples costs around 90p or less, just one small chocolate bar around 40p. Tarquin on email, I see nothing wrong in an app to warn or tell children they're overweight. Their parents would probably not tell the child. Julie on Twitter, eating disorders are not always all about weight loss. They can be about control. When you feel your life is chaotic, you focus on what you can control, and that's weight. And Hope, that sort of chiming with where you were coming from.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think that's the thing. I think when we look at the obesity crisis and when we look at people with eating disorders, quite often we just look at the weight of that individual. We're not looking at that mental state. And I think that is the worry with the app, is it's simplifying actually what could be a really complex mental health problem for that individual.
Mental health issues obviously are addressed in people with anorexia. What about obesity? In your experience, was mental health ever something that was discussed?
Really, back in the 90s, not at all.
And
No.
I think actually that's something that I've found. So I do a lot of mental health campaigning on the side and work predominantly trying to make sure that people can access treatment whenever they need it. And a huge thing that I've come up against with a campaign that I'm working on separately called Dump the Scales is actually the fact that a lot of people who are overweight aren't able to access any kind of mental health treatment because their BMIs aren't low enough. And actually by using apps like Weight Watchers, there's that fear that actually we're not tackling, again, like I said, the mental health problems that so many young people, but also older people are facing at the moment.
I mean, what we do know is that when we look at effective treatments, they are family-based. They involve the whole family. They involve the family environment, the emotions, all those things are brought together and the parents are involved.
And that goes beyond just basic education about what a good diet looks like, does it?
Yes, indeed. It's highly complex. We know that there's a lot of emotions, and the speaker just said related to it being very complex. But I think if we're going to look at how we could tackle this on a wider element, it really needs to focus on getting a family-based approach. The Henry program in Leeds, which is a family-based, parent-focused element, actually has reduced obesity. It's the only program that's actually reduced it in the UK, reduced it by 1% recently. So that's a tremendous improvement, but the focus wasn't on the child. The focus was on the family environment and changing that. Having worked in specialist weight management for over a decade, I think there needs to be a nuance really here, particularly around weight loss. And when we are seeing children living with obesity with a weight of over 150 kilos, a body mass index of over 50, with highly complex issues and comorbidities, or they've got something that might actually reduce their life expectancy, I think we need to tackle that. But whether this app is solely the solution, I'm not convinced. I think it could add as a total package, be an option there, but not solely by itself at the moment.
Thank you all very much for joining us and for your thoughts and experiences. Thank you. Thank you.